You say you're trapped, but have you ever stopped to think, who forged the chains? 3 in the morning, you gaze at the ceiling, once again feeling the weight of a life that seems like no way out. The job you despise, the relationship that drains you, the people who only reach out when they need something. And there, in that brutal silence, you whisper the question that hurts the most. How did I get here? Sartre would say that the world might hurt you, but it was you who locked yourself in from the inside. Every excuse you've made, every time you said, I can't, every moment you chose the painful familiarity over the liberating unknown. The chains you carry today were forged by your own hands, link by link, decision by decision. Today, you'll understand how you stopped becoming a prisoner of yourself, and more importantly, how to break the shackles you created. Because Sartre was right about one thing: the prison was never external. It was you who built it, and only you can tear it down. If this has ever happened to you, comment below. I need to know if you recognize the chains you've made, habits that drain you, relationships that erase you, routines that anesthetize you. Everything seems normal, but you accepted each of these shackles. The chain doesn't form all at once. It's shaped day after day, choice by choice, until you no longer notice the weight you carry. You wake up at the same time, go to the same job that kills you inside, talk to the same people who drain your energy, return home and surrender to the same vices that numb you. And when someone suggests change, you say, I can't, I have responsibilities. Responsibilities, the favorite word of anyone trying to justify their own cowardice. But here's the irony. You created those responsibilities. You accepted that job. You chose those people. You built that routine brick by brick. And now you pretend that it was fate, society, family, anything but you, that put you in this cage. The invisible chains are the most dangerous because you don't see them being forged. Every yes when you wanted to say no. Every dream postponed because it's not the right time. Every confrontation avoided out of fear of displease. Every time you chose the comfort of the familiar prison over the terrifying freedom of the unknown. Sartre called this the project of life, not the conscious project, the one you plan, but the unconscious project, that one you live without realizing, is the pursuit of remaining small, of not bothering, of not taking risks, of not truly living. This is how a free man transforms himself into the architect of his own prison. Self-deception is lying to oneself to avoid the discomfort of freedom. It's easier to believe that the world has imprisoned you than to admit that you forged the shackles with your own hands. Sartre discovered a brutal truth about human nature. We prefer the comforting lie over the liberating truth. Self-deception isn't just about lying to others. It's about deceiving oneself so convincingly that one believes in their own performance. It's saying, I have no choice, when in reality you're afraid to choose. It's claiming, I can't, when you simply don't want to. It's asserting, it's not up to me, when everything depends precisely on you. You know this inner dialogue. I wanted to change, but my parents don't understand. I'd try something new, but I don't have the money. I'd quit this job, but I need to pay the bills. I'd end this relationship, but she needs me. Each of these statements is a chain being forged in real time, and you are the blacksmith. Self-deception works because it offers an irresistible illusion that you are a victim of circumstances, that your choices have been limited by external forces, that you had no options. This lie absolves you of responsibility, but also robs you of freedom. Because if you didn't create the prison, you can't destroy it. Sartre saw through this facade. He knew that every man is condemned to be free, condemned not because he chose to be born, but because he is free to decide what to do with this existence. And it is this radical freedom that terrifies us. Because if we are truly free, then we are responsible for everything, including our own imprisonment. Self-deception is the mechanism that shields us from this overwhelming truth. It's more comfortable to be a victim than to be the author of one's life. It's easier to blame the world than to take control. But this protection comes at a cost. Living a life that isn't yours, in a prison you built yourself, carrying chains you forged yourself. You create boundaries to avoid rejection, failure, exposure. But these defenses become emotional prisons. Sartre would say, "The fear of being free makes a man manufacture his own cell." The cruel irony of human existence is that we build walls to protect ourselves, yet end up trapped within them. Start with rejection. You are so afraid of rejection that you stop exposing yourself. You cease trying. You stop taking risks. You prefer the safe solitude over uncertain love. You choose mediocrity over daring ventures. You settle for superficial conversations instead of genuine dialogue. And you label this as being realistic or grounded. But it's merely cowardice disguised as prudence. Failure is another phantom that paralyzes you. You fear failure so intensely that you stop beginning. You refrain from trying new things. You avoid stepping out of your comfort zone, and you justify it by saying, "Better not to try than to try and fail." Yet Sartre would tell you that you have already failed the moment you chose not to try. Because a life unlived is the greatest failure of all. Exposure is perhaps the most subtle of fears. You are terrified that others will discover your true self, your flaws, insecurities, and fears. So you craft a persona, a social mask that conceals your authentic face. But this mask becomes a prison. You become so preoccupied with maintaining the facade that you forget who you truly are beneath it. Every psychological defense you build to shield yourself from the world becomes a bar in your existential cage. You avoid confrontations to keep the peace, but in doing so, you become invisible. You avoid risks to stay safe, but in turn, you become stagnant. You steer clear of controversial opinions to be accepted, but end up lacking personality. And the cruelest part is that you do all this consciously, yet deny to yourself that you are doing it. You know that you are choosing safety over freedom, but you tell yourself a different story. A story in which circumstances force you, limitations confine you, and others restrict you. Any story except the truth, that you chose imprisonment out of fear of liberty. Nothing will change until you admit, "It was I who allowed this." Freedom begins the moment you stop negotiating with lies. Acknowledging your role is the first strike against the chain. There is a moment in every man's life when he can choose between remaining a prisoner or taking responsibility as the architect of his own confinement. It is a brutal, painful, but necessary moment. If you have the courage to reflect on this, write in the comments the moment when you realized you had created your own chains. And if this resonates with you, leave a like, not for me, but for yourself, for having the courage to face this truth. Confronting one's own responsibility is devastating, because it means letting go of all the excuses you've used for years to explain your life. It means admitting that you are not a victim of circumstances, you are the author of them. It means acknowledging that every "I can't" was actually "I don't want to," and that each "I have no choice" was a disguised decision. But this confrontation is also liberating, because if you created the prison, you can destroy it. If you forged the chains, you can break them. If you built the walls, you can tear them down. The responsibility that so many fear is also what grants you power over your own life. Sartre called this existential anguish, the anxiety of recognizing that we are entirely free and utterly responsible, that there are no excuses, no justifications, nothing but our choices. And at each moment, we are deciding who we are and how we live. The person who assumes ownership of their own chains does something most will never do, stops being a victim and becomes the protagonist, stops reacting and starts acting, stops justifying and begins changing. It's a total rupture with the past, a definitive divorce from the lie that kept life small and controlled. But beware, this realization comes at a price. You can no longer blame anyone for your life. You can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer pretend you have no power over your circumstances. From the moment you take responsibility for the forge, you become accountable for breaking each chain, dismantling each wall, opening every door you closed from the inside. This isn't about freeing yourself once, but about rebuilding yourself daily. Abandon comfort, face pain, and act even without guarantees. That is true freedom, conscious action in the face of one's own story. Liberation is not a single event, a grand revelation that changes everything all at once. It's a daily process, a choice that must be renewed every morning. Presence means being aware of every decision you make. It means stopping the autopilot and starting to live intentionally. It means questioning every automatic yes, every cowardly no, every decision made without reflection. Presence is the antidote to self-deception, to invisible chains, to unconscious imprisonment. Every morning you wake up with a choice, to continue being who you were yesterday, or to build who you want to be today, to keep forging the same chains, or to begin breaking them, continuing to lie to yourself, or beginning to live in truth. It's a simple choice, yet not an easy one. Because breaking chains hurts. Destroying prisons is frightening. Living in freedom is exhausting. Chains offer something that freedom does not: predictability. When you're imprisoned, you know what to expect. You know where you'll be tomorrow, next month, next year. Prison is limiting, but it's safe. Freedom is infinite, but it's uncertain. And most people are terrified of uncertainty. That's why they prefer the familiar chains over the unknown freedom. Yet Sartre would tell you that this security is an illusion, that you have no guarantees in prison or in freedom. The only difference is that in prison, you live a life that isn't truly yours, whereas in freedom, you have the chance to build an authentic life. In prison, you are a spectator of your own existence. In freedom, you are the director, the screenwriter, and the protagonist. Breaking chains requires courage to act without guarantees, to take the first step without knowing where it will lead, to leave a job without another secured, to end a relationship without knowing if another will follow, to move to a new city without certainty of success, to be who you are without knowing if you will be accepted. Each chain broken is a small death, the death of who you were, to make room for who you can become. It is painful because you are destroying a part of yourself, but it is necessary because that part was preventing you from truly living. And to truly live, really live, is worth the pain of dying a little each day. No one can remove your chains except you. And no one else can claim ownership of your imprisonment, nor of your liberation. We have reached the end of a journey that, ironically, is only the beginning. Because realizing that you created your own chains is just the first step. The second, and the hardest, is having the courage to break them. Sartre spent his life trying to wake us from a deep sleep, the sleep of those who believe they are victims of circumstances, who think they have no choice, who convince themselves that life happens to them rather than through them. But the brutal and simple truth is, you are entirely free and entirely responsible for every chain you carry. That does not mean the world offers no resistance, that people do not try to limit you, that circumstances are easy. It means that regardless of what the world does, you always have a choice: how to respond, how to interpret, the choice of how to act. And it is these choices, thousands of them every day, that forge your prison or your freedom. Authentic freedom is not merely doing what you want. It is taking full responsibility for what you are and what you become. It is ceasing to blame the past, parents, society, government, partner, boss, or friends. It is recognizing that everything, absolutely everything in your life exists because you permitted, accepted, or chose it. Now tell me, are you still trying to be understood, or have you already grasped the game? Will you continue negotiating with the lies that keep you confined, or will you have the courage to face the truth that sets you free? Write this in the comments. It is your contract to break free from the prison you have built for yourself. The chains are real. The weight you feel is genuine. The prison that suffocates you exists. But it was your hands that intertwined each link. It was your choice that built every wall. It was your decision that locked every door. Sartre knew the cell was never external. It was you who created it. And if you want to keep listening to truths that no one else will dare to tell you, subscribe. Here, illusions do not survive. Here you stop being a prisoner and start being free. Not because someone will liberate you, but because you will take responsibility for breaking your own chains, one by one, until nothing remains but the radical freedom to be who you truly are.